Hey, Charlie, how you doing?
I'm good.
Welcome to the chat, everyone. This is Charlie Widdis, and tonight we are going to talk about building a map for D&D. Charlie, take it
Yes.
away, sir.
So yeah, we're gonna build just a kind of a basic battle map tonight. Since Steve is in both my games, I'm not gonna do anything that's actually pertinent, so I don't want to get any inside information. So we're gonna make just kind of a generic map. For starters, I've used some other softwares. So far I keep coming back to these guys. It's Incarnate, incarnate.com. It's all browser based, which means I can do it on a bunch of different devices. And it's just easy to update, easy to come back. A lot of the other software I've used is usually kind of like either like a shareware or like one developer, and they never seem to work as well as I want them to. So with that, we're gonna create a new map. I'm going to do a fantasy battle map. Usually I do, since these are usually shared online, I'm going to usually do landscape instead of portrait. It means I don't have to scroll as much or at all typically.
So, because we're doing this live, if any of you guys have any questions, please feel free to ask at any time.
So this is kind of what you always start with. It's kind of the default. In this mode, your math tool. This is where you decide, like, if you want water to actually kind of look like a different level. Oops, let me switch my layers. There we go. All right, subtract. No, it's because I'm on the wrong layer, isn't it? There we go. So you can change, essentially give it a sense of elevation if you want to. Now, this doesn't obviously look like a pond, but it gives you a sense of layering that you can then add on to down the road. I'm probably not going to do that here. I think we're going to go for something simple like basically an abandoned castle. Something simple, something you could definitely see a bunch of adventurers moving in and trying to loot potentially. So we'll probably do a pretty simple. I usually kind of start with like a grass because a lot of these things are in a either field or temperate forest. And then we basically just fill it in real quick. And then I will add more on top of it if I want to change it. I usually just kind of give myself whatever background, lowest level canvas I want first, just to kind of get a sense of it. So this is just a pretty...
Can you change the size of that circle?
Oh, yeah. I'm just...
Okay.
Yeah, being lazy. They have a bunch of hotkeys, too, that I should use more. So, like, if I want to just hit W... and then there are other ways, like I could have just selected the whole screen and done it. I don't know. I'm just a glutton for punishment like that. Not going to change this much right now. So we go into the stamp tool here, basically. And this is going to be where you're going to find all of your little stamps of objects, structures. Oh, yeah, there's some pretty good options. They've been updating it slowly. Like they just updated it to add some desert ones, as well as more broken things. Because again, usually in D&D, you're not necessarily in the nicest place all the time. There's always some old ruin that's everything's broken. What? I know, right? We're cliche, but we love it. They've also added all kinds of just like generic structures, which is nice. So like if you don't have time, you're like, okay, I need to do a castle. Wait a second, and bam, I got myself a castle.
Shut the front door. That's amazing. Oh, then you just resize?
Yeah, and you can resize it. You could probably even use a portion of it. You could probably zoom in on just one room and then show some of the external room if you want to. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I honest to God thought you spent like hours on these maps, and now I'm kind of...
Well, it depends. It depends on the map. It depends on the map.
All right.
A lot of this stuff is also new, like literally as in a few weeks new. So for the year and change I was running the game before this, I was doing it all manually. So respect this dude, please. Let's see. So if we're doing, I'll start with the walls and I'll show you why down the road. Let's see, castle. There's even a section for castle. Look at that. Castle walls. Again, didn't exist a little while ago. So I can literally just start with my structure. If you want, you can kind of have it set to random. So each time you get a different version of it, but it only works for some of them.
Okay.
Well, I mean, like you don't want to have just a random piece of wall usually pop up if you're trying to make it a certain particular structure.
So fog of war in mind, and when I mean that, I mean like when I say that, I mean like players can't see what's behind the next door. Can you use that with the layers in this map?
No. Well, yes and no. I mean, I guess if I ran the game specifically in this desktop app, I could.
Okay.
But if we used Roll20 appropriately, we could do it through that. Where as you guys moved, it would literally remove the fog of war. That requires everybody playing off of a desktop of some kind, at least, or maybe like an iPad. But half our players don't. They play off their phones. So that's
let me
why
ask you,
run it like we run it.
if you had this map and you made multiple copies, could you just do it by switching maps?
I could do that. Honestly, I didn't even think about that. That's actually not a bad idea.
So it is possible.
I would say in this case, the layers aren't that. It's not like Photoshop where I can have 17 layers easily. There is a way to do it. You can select various layers like this, but it doesn't necessarily remove. Like I can't switch that. I can only apply which layer I want it on. So I can apply things above each other, but I can't then select that layer and remove it easily. I don't think. I've never tried it before.
All right.
TBD, folks. I actually might have an answer for you at some point because that actually sounds interesting. See, that's in this case. I just need to make this shorter. So the good news is a lot of these will match up, so it's not too hard to line them up if you don't.
That's kind of fantastic.
Right? You just gotta get the right placement is all.
Is it possible to shrink it as well, or will it just look weird?
Well, you can, but you can't free shrink it, so I can't thin it out or anything like that. I can only shrink it in its entirety, so it looked weird.
Oh, that does look weird.
Right.
Fair.
So in this case, sometimes you end up with some irregularities and things don't quite show up as well as you want them to. Like something doesn't line up right. But as long as the players aren't jerks, it doesn't usually matter because they're not going to notice that because they're too busy actually playing the game. Doesn't look too bad. It's a little off, but again, if you're doing a good enough job as a DM, they probably won't notice.
So how long have you been a DM?
Not long. So Steve, we started playing like last April 2020, right?
Yeah, about that.
That is my first time.
Wow.
Yeah,
pretty well established, I feel like.
Having ADHD means that I don't do anything in half measures. So it means that I'm going to be a DM. Okay, well, I'm going to be a DM then.
Have you thought of using, the skills that you've learned as a DM through the pandemic to expand your income? I know there were stories of DMs who were running games for $500 a piece. Anything like that?
That always pops in my head. Who doesn't want to leave, their regular day job if they can? I would not count myself as experienced enough yet. I've again only run one game until I moved into the second game. That's a confidence I don't have yet. Because again, I know lots of DMs who have played pretty much every edition since first edition.
And we were talking about that before with calculating FATCO and using AC and all that fun stuff.
Anybody who never played 2, count yourself lucky. 2 was an absolute slog of a game. There are people who are going to watch this and who are going to be off with his head.
So right now you're just thinking outline, right?
Basically, once I get the main structure, honestly, the hardest part I find with any of these things is you have to build the structures. Now, some will make that easier, some will make that harder. But in most cases, once I get that, it's actually the easy part because having that in mind when I'm trying to figure out, one, where everything's going to be. I don't know what the other corner. It is the other corner. Okay. Try to figure out where the bad guy is going to be, where the player is going to be. Can I, am I going to give you guys the proper sometimes I need to give you cover. Do I got to give you a higher? I have to think about all that. Once that's done, that's the hard part. I find. By far.
So, at what point do you decide to put the detail in?
once the structure's done.
Yeah.
Let's see, I'm missing the opposite corner. All right, so this is where I get to fudge it a little bit.
So exactly what are you doing to fudge it?
So in this case, I have a quarter piece. The quarter piece doesn't turn exactly as I want it to. So that means like I'll have to 27, 270. Like if I have to fiddle with kind of like this, it doesn't look perfect. You know,
Right.
You see what I mean? But it will work. You know, it's not unbelievable. It doesn't, and again, for the most part, if people are noticing that kind of level of detail in my maps, I'm not doing a very good job. So I wonder, the only thing I never know if I can literally mirror this. Mirroring things perfectly in this is hard. So if I duplicate all of them, I don't think I can just flip-flop them. Let's see. No, there is no way to just, if I turn them the opposite direction, they'll just turn upside down. It doesn't work.
Oh.
Yeah. What I can do, though, is anything that's kind of straight, I can go, all right, we're going to make a group out of you, so they're all in the group now, and then I can duplicate that. Once I go back to here, I'll just flip it 180 degrees, and it should, oh, I don't have it selected.
So we thought we would take about an hour to do this tonight, just to kind of like, for anybody who's never played with Incarnate before, or anybody who is interested in making maps, or even DMing, but they weren't sure how to make their own content, this is a great resource for you.
Well, and I'll tell you right now, like when I'm trying to even think of storylines, playing around with maps to make just random locations often doesn't end up being maps, because it will inspire me to think of like, okay, who lives here, or what is haunting here? What is here the adventurers need to find?
So you're building the story after or while you're making the maps?
So sometimes, if I'm, like I said, if I'm really looking for some extra inspiration, sometimes starting with the map isn't a bad way to go.
Interesting.
Because it can kind of inform, the creative process. Because again, if you start building a structure, my brain will start immediately trying to tell the story of that structure in general. Like, okay, why is it? I need a different piece. Why is that structure the way it is? Again, like what's in it that would drive, your average day-to-day adventurer to explore it or risk. I mean, because you got to think like, it doesn't happen in most DM games because you're trying to have a fun collective story, but like, in the gig that they're in, the characters could die really easily, and like that's part of the job. Like you risk life and limb. So what would drive people to risk that life to explore? Like, is it riches? Is it power? Is it magic? Is it not magic? Is it is there information here? So you can go all kinds of different directions on that, and it kind of comes down to, all right, once I get that, filling in the details as to why those characters, specifically what drives them there, who might oppose them, and for what reason. So now I'm not only thinking of like my enemies for an encounter, I'm now thinking about the organization behind it potentially, or why are these here? Did they kill people? So were the people here before? Now I got to think of a history for this. Now I have to start building NPCs in these organizations. And suddenly, from building one map, you could, in theory, develop an entire world. I'm a very visual learner. And so because of that, this can sometimes help that a lot.
So did you have any sort of like Photoshop background at all?
Oh, I'm a photographer, so I absolutely have a Photoshop background.
So I feel like you're more inclined, or you find the software that you're using easier than you think a normal person might?
Definitely to some extent, because once you kind of start getting into like, dealing with layers and stuff like that, it will seep into your head anyway. I will say that this product is relatively simple, and in that simplicity, it lets you to kind of do a lot without any issues. So I don't have to constantly deal with software issues, or, it's browser based. So it's meant to be low tech and easy to work with, even some like pretty simple internet. Like I don't have amazing internet. I have okay internet. I forgot what was the question, Steve. I was just trailing off there for a while. I'll talk forever if you let me.
How hard was the
Photoshop.
transition? Yeah.
Right. So I would say definitely easier. I don't think this is a hard one to use for anybody who is even a little tech savvy. What's what I was trying to do? Jeez. Give me a second and I will figure it out.
Will you? Let's see.
That's fair. That's fair.
See, that doesn't seem bad. Oh, but the piece will look different on this side, right?
A little bit.
The corner piece?
Yeah, it might actually look right. So that's the other thing. I wish they need one more corner piece. They only have one corner piece, and that doesn't make sense to me. Well, it's gonna more or less work. The hotkeys can only tip it so much. All right, then we're gonna do our little fudge wall. No, it's in the same thing again. Now this is always, so then we're just gonna turn that 270, so it's gonna line up like
it
that.
Feels like it's almost auto-centering. Is that the case?
It might be a little bit, because again, that's where the thing where like Photoshop actually would be a little bit better, in that you can there's like guides and stuff you can use. In this, there's not really guides. You're kind of doing a lot of it yourself. So like I guessed that these were opposite sides of each other, but there is nothing in here that will tell me that that is the case. Again, one of the downsides to this being a really simple, program and whatnot to use is that it's not as robust. So again, kind of like Photoshop, but kind of not. Photoshop has so many options you actually get buried in it if you're not careful. Whereas in this is so simple that everybody can work it. The downside being that you can't do some of the more creative stuff you might want to do, or really make something symmetrical. Because again, buildings aren't symmetrical. Fall. So it makes sense that we'd want to make them symmetrical. That looks probably fine, though.
So I see there's a little gap there. What are you going to do about
that? I'm going to probably just go into here, and I'm going to try to find they have smaller portions of the wall, and I'll just kind of fudge it in there. And try to line it up as best I can, and that should make a more or less an overlap. You just got to line it up.
That's pretty good. I mean, I feel like if you didn't know that was there.
Oh, it's exactly it.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And, again, always trying to find ways to make the game more interesting so you ignore the fact that my maps aren't great. So this is, again, a lot easier. They didn't used to have any indoor textures, really, or they had very few. So a lot of times you actually had to go in here and find pieces of, like, stone and line them up in a way to make like a good stone floor.
Gross.
I know. And so they've added a lot of things since that made it easier. Now I can literally just paint.
Wow.
Look at that.
Yeah, that's dope. Are you on a different layer?
No, but it automatically, because it's a texture, it automatically places it below all objects. So again, it makes an ideal floor. Again, before that, if I had to actually make a faux stone floor, like it would have taken me forever, because I would have had to play with layers, making sure layers, because a lot of these objects are programmed to cast shadow. So you have to make sure the proper shadow is on the proper layer, or it looks really bad. And then you can zoom in a bunch, so I can. Go back to this. Let's shrink this a little bit. Oh, no.
So you're just cropping out the outside?
A little bit, yeah. There we go. That's what I want to do. Nope. There we go.
Super detailed.
Well, again, I like to be able to make it as clean as possible, considering half like my floor in here. So, but that's more or less the structure. Okay, so what's going to happen in here? Well, probably some kind of demonic ritual. Sound familiar?
Yeah. Yep.
Common theme in my games is demons, because why not?
They're easy. I feel like.
It is easy, Focus on the smaller details by making some of the bigger details more vague. Because why wouldn't there be a world with demons in it? Let's see.
I love all the icons in here. Like,
oh no, these are. It's again. This is vastly more than what they used to have. I still find myself lacking sometimes, and will wish that I had something.
Are you paying anything for this?
$25 a year.
Okay, all right. So it's not free.
It's not well there, but that's not. There is a free account. I just went with the paid account because it gives me more options.
Okay. So if you didn't have a paid account, what would you be looking at?
You wouldn't get nearly as many stamps. You can't have as many maps. So I'd have to make 3 or 4 maps. I can't remember what their limit is, and then either delete them, save them, but knowing I can't go back and change them or re-export them and stuff like that. You definitely get fewer textures. So it's still really. The software at its core is great. Still, you just lack some of the options. I'm running 2 games, so the number of battle maps and regional maps I have to have is pretty big. So having to really I can't go fix this anymore. I have to delete it so I can make the next map. Would be really annoying. And $25 a year is nothing. A month, it's like $2 something a month. So as far as resources,
is a month would be serious investment.
Yeah, considering I spend I think $10 a month for D&D Beyond, plus all the other small services I use, plus I subscribe to some Patreons to get some content here or there. It adds up pretty quick. So knowing I'm only paying $2 something a month for this and how much use I get out of it. I use this for almost every game. So,
but how much time would you say that you've spent on a single map?
Battle maps aren't too bad. Again, once I can get the core structure done, then I can breeze through pretty quickly. If I'm doing a regional map where it's basically a town and its surrounding area, that might take me a little bit longer just because there's a lot more fine-tuning of small details. And a world map takes me, mostly for the sake of creativity, but I take more of my time. I'd say it could take me weeks, but that's partially just because I can't sit down for a whole day and do it. But let's see. So we got some light sources, and I do like because they finally did add lighting options, so you can actually add kind of a faux glow from your light sources.
That to me is super detailed,
right?
Which is great.
Yeah, being a photographer, lighting is key. Lighting is mood. So sometimes it means if I can add a little bit of that to add a little more mood, I think it makes the maps look a little more authentic and real in that sense. Even I'm going to derail my map making for a second to show one that I made a while back. Steve and the gang had to go kill some drow thieves / assassins guild in the sewers. And I'm going to bring up one I made for that just to give you a sense. So with this one, I added glows to the torches in here, but because I wanted the slime to feel really good, the slime and sludge of the sewage to feel really gross, I actually changed the color of that lighting ability and turned it somewhat green, and then I made that all over the water. And then without that, you just have a kind of a really dark green paint. I don't think it kind of has the same impact,
right? Personally,
and then and then the extra details I added, because again, this is just flavor text for my players. Not that it has any bearing in the game. Is why not tell the story of when a dragon was here, or when a dude in some random cave with a bunch of treasure died in the throne. Fun stuff like that.
Can you show us your first map?
Yeah, it's definitely not as nice. It's not bad. So at first I started playing around with just the parchment idea. And so I had literally this.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It's pretty simple. It's not bad. Again, anybody who's played in person before remembers, the DM breaking out just a piece of plexiglass over a grid and then drawing out just the castle. So, already this is more detail than we were used to have. And then from there, I think the first one I actually used. Do I have it in here? I gotta have it in here. Oh, maybe I don't. I have to go digging for it later. But probably the map after that, I started getting a little more detailed. So then we get into something like this.
Yeah, that's a huge leap.
It is. I mean, I spent a lot more time playing with it. Again, ADHD. This is once I first figured I could do this. This was all I thought about for at least a month. So I spent a lot of time playing, but even still, there's a lot of gaps. Like you can see, like these don't quite line up right. At the time, they still didn't. A lot of their objects that if you angled them even off of what their default was, it would throw things off, which you can kind of tell even with some of these stamps and stuff like that. And this is before they actually had what you call a battle map ability, which I'm making now. This is actually like just a normal regional map that I tried to make it in smaller detail, and it more or less works. No, here it is. This is where I went after I did the parchment idea.
Okay. All right. So that was the second.
Yeah. So it's still a big jump up. Again, you can definitely tell that there was a fast learning curve. I was able to go from there, think about it some more, and then actually make this. Granted, I definitely took probably days coming back to this and tweaking it more, whereas now I don't sweat it that much. And then I also don't need the grid anymore because, we do it all on a grid system anyway.
Night and day. I mean, it really is. So.
Yeah. And again, it's not that parchment style is bad. Again, it's whatever works for your party. And I use the maps as part of my storytelling because I feel like it's because I'm lacking in other aspects. I definitely don't RP enough. So this is the other details I give, whereas in other storytellers and DMs are so good at storytelling, the maps are almost inconsequential because it's in everybody's head.
Right.
So this is kind of my way of using my natural ability to fool around with this kind of stuff. I don't want to say tech savvy, but I can pick up technology quick, at least. This is my way of adding part of my other skills to the game, to kind of, and it helps, I feel like, make up for any insecurities I may have,
I'm just looking at some of the icons, and I'm just floored, like some of the food items and...
Well, they have a food section, and then they also have a full rotting food section. I have options. So, hey, I have cheese. Yeah, well, if this place hasn't been entered in 50 years, that cheese isn't going to look yellow anymore, which I love because that actually, again, if you walk into a place that looks like it's old and beat up, but the only stamp I have is what looks like a fresh piece of cheese or fruit, that's going to totally throw off the vibe.
Right.
You're not going to have that in a 100-year-old dungeon, Let's see. What else was this guy doing the ritual going to need? Let's see. There's a whole magic section, so let's see. I think we're just going to probably do a magic circle. That looks good. Summoning circle is definitely going to be...
That is huge.
Yeah, I already had it set pretty big because these braziers are meant to be smaller, but I totally abused it anyway. So, yeah. And again, sometimes it makes things seem too bright on their background. So you can even go into specific items, and I can reduce the brightness on it.
Okay.
And if I want the details to stick out, I might still boost the contrast. It makes the edges harder and easier for them to stand out, but I can still make it darker. I think it adds a bit of an ominous aspect to it. And again, I can change the hue of my lighting here. So if I find a red, let's see, that's probably red. I can add a bit of a reddish glow to it too. And I can reduce the impact of it too. So this is if I wanted to reduce the opacity. So again, that is a subtle glow, but it's there. It's dimly glowing. It's eerily glowing. Again, it's my DM brain already saying that's how I'm going to describe it. Let's see. What else would he have? I feel like this guy, wasn't there pools of blood at some point?
There was definitely pools of blood in one of our
there. Yeah. I mean, what? Me? Yeah, no.
So, I mean, we've spent 30 minutes on this already. So
I know. Part of it's because I'm talking. I could probably have been, further along, but still, I mean,
do honestly, you find it's a time sink for you?
I enjoy it, so it's kind of hard to tell. But I mean, sometimes it can be the one thing I'm like, I got to build a map for this thing. But again, it doesn't have to be like, yeah, I'm going to add a lot more detail to this, but like, this is fine.
Right.
Like, I could take this and run a game off of it really easily, I think. And so you don't have to go crazy. I'm just somebody who likes to add more details. Again, this is part of my ability to tell stories. Sometimes I'm trying to add those finer details because even if people don't necessarily immediately go, hey, look at that little tiny detail, they're subconsciously aware of it because it draws them in a little bit more. Occasionally when I give you guys the maps, you guys do say, wow. And I'm like, all right, you did it.
So can you bring up the map that's actually behind you?
Oh, yeah. This was a fun one. So, Steve, you remember what we were down here? I know you're not always
There were
great
a
at
lot
that.
of mushrooms.
There were a lot of mushrooms, both ambulatory ones that actually moved, and ones that didn't.
So I see where you've used a lot of that light hues.
Yes, I mean, well, you're in the Underdark, so I had to
Right.
find a way to make it so you guys could see something.
Right. So very cool, very cool. How long did this map take you?
This one took me a little bit longer. I'd say it's still probably 2 to 3 hours at most. Maybe on the 2 side, a little more detail here for sure. I had a lot more kind of like subtlety stuff here. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I'd say probably about 2 hours realistically. And I would say at least half an hour of that is me dicking around, trying something new, or making see if it works. So originally I probably, was thinking about having fireplaces, and I fiddled with the light a bunch, and then I put the mushrooms, and I'm like, oh, what if I wanted some glowing mushrooms? And it's me kind of figuring out some of the small details as I go. And then like originally I was just going to have nothing here, but I wanted it to have the hint of like, hey, this is the way you're coming from. And so I added that later because I'm like, oh, and I fiddled with that a little bit. So anyway,
cool.
That was a fun one.
Very cool.
With the NPC that everybody loves to hate. Well, one of the NPCs. Castle stuff.
There is a search function in the upper left-hand corner there.
Yes. Yeah, I should use it more often, but I don't. So just to give this a little more sense of like, why are these out here? We're going to put some staircases. Oops, got to re-up the opacity. So I'll put some staircases in here, kind of. Make them look somewhat functional.
What are you using to resize? Is that just like plus minus?
So no, it's WS. I'm not entirely sure why. Some of the other ones make sense. So like to rotate it, it's the right and left, like greater than and less than arrows, whatever you call those.
I think that's pretty typical for gaming. WS, so up and down.
Maybe. I mean, again, coming from in Photoshop, the up and down your brush is the bracket button. So I hit those all the time and nothing happens. I get really confused.
Yeah, I find myself using AWSD quite a bit.
Oh, instead of your arrow keys.
Yeah, for all my adventuring. My adventures in gaming.
Yeah. Remember back in the day before they introduced that, you'd still have to use the actual keypad. So you'd have your mouse over to the left, to the right, and then you're crowded into this small little area with your keyboard because you're only using the very right side of it. And then they make you like, oh, now hit Q, and you're like, no, I'm not going to hit Q. My hands are all over here. Anyway, that's my rant. And I'm happy they switched it over to. You know what? We're also going to have an altar, I think, with a funky book.
So do you make the altar first and then just drop a book on it?
Yeah.
Okay. Just layering.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, yeah, it will automatically do that. Now, you can set the layer of things. So these are all set to layer 1. But even still, if I do go get the book, right? It was under magic, right? I get the book, say, right? First of all, I can make it smaller. It will automatically put it on top of it. But in theory, it might not. So like I can change the layer of this one up. So I think it's control up arrow. So now this is on top of the book.
Gotcha.
So if I wanted to make sure that the book always stayed on top of that in case I move things, I could put it on the second layer. It will always stay above that that layer. So no matter what I do, the book's always going to stay under that layer, and no matter where I move it. So
Very cool.
And then for that book, he's got to have a candle to read by. So
I feel like you're already making the story in your mind because you just said, I don't know if you're conscious of it.
He's got to have a book. Yeah, I mean,
have a book.
Yeah, and then if he's got to have a book, he's got to have a light to read by, right? If you could give him a mouse a cookie. I mean, again, common cliche theme, easy to start with. The party has to stop a ritual. If this ritual is allowed to go on, one, they'll sacrifice some of the villagers that have gone missing, which is why you were hired in the first place. And two, they'll summon in a greater evil, or it's a summoning for an evil god or the physical embodiment of an evil god. You can go with a bunch of different ways, and because what I like about this is that I could give this to a level 1 party or a level 20 player party. There may be more a level 20 party, but like they could all be the ones doing this. And not to mention, like, your level 1 party now suddenly, like, they could be world saviors at level 1. That's cool. I mean, how many level 1s can you imagine? Like a Joe Schmo, martial artist with a yellow belt. How many times could he be like, "Oh, with my martial arts, I can save the world"? Never.
Fantastic.
Yeah, that's the movie I want to watch, though. Anyway, but so yeah, it's an easy theme to go with, and it can be scaled so well. And then why not have some books just kind of scattered, because he's a madman, because that's why he's doing this in the first place. See, this is where the random stamps tool is nice, because it will automatically change the color and the orientation of it so that they all look different. I don't have to go in and manually change that every single time.
Oh, that's super cool.
Yeah. There. So now you have a madman with an evil book that is now casting a ritual.
All right. So a little bit off, like a side note. Like, how are you making the icons for players? Because I know in our games you're able to design them fairly well. Are you doing that through Incarnate as well?
No. So all the game is run. We run on more or less the Roll20 system. Roll20.net. Again, we don't play it with the full way, because if we play it with you guys all having your own accounts and we log into that system, you could then move your own figures and stuff like that and measure distance and stuff. You're not relying on me to do it for you. Again, requires everybody to be able to use Roll20, which the way we play it now they can't. I lost train of thought again. What was I going with that?
Making the characters.
Roll20 itself has some generic ones you can use. You can buy other ones made by them. I actually, they're always really too finely detailed for the scale of the maps we're on. I actually subscribe to Patreon. It's 2 Minute Tabletop. It's the group, 2minutetabletop.com. They have a whole icon system now. Like, basically, they're literally all. I'll bring them up real quick. So it's basically where I get a lot of my tokens now, because they're almost kind of caricatures of themselves in some ways, but they stand out better when they're a smaller piece of a map.
Whoa.
Yeah. I mean, so, and then they're adding more and more, so I can get the specific race with the specific skin tone to the specific, so if I have a half elf wizard, there we go. A half orc barbarian, human cleric, human druid. They're doing different genders, so you would basically, like, oh, I'm a female, human cleric potentially. So this is where we're getting a lot of them. They also have a system where you can take a lot of the ones that are pre-made and change the colors all around if you want to, so you can make specific ones.
Very cool.
Yeah. All right. Still feeling a little empty, though. That's the downside. So this is where you start to really fill it in with some of the extra fluff. So, yeah, we're going to have, it's a old castle turned into an evil temple. So when you're going to have an evil temple, you got to have freaky statues. All set up to some undead god and cult. Because, again, who's doing this ritual? The guy who's leader of a cult, the madman.
So you just feel like you need the space.
Well, again, so I have everything I need to play the game now, but this space is lived in, so I want to give it some of the details that make it seem lived in. Again, if I'm going for functionality, I've done more than I already have to. You get the sense of it, but what's going to make it seem more real is those little tiny details, that make it look different. Make it look a little more actually happening, if that makes sense. And then let's see. We'll put a broken statue in here. Oops. No.
Yeah, that thing's huge.
Well, for now, I'm gonna shrink it quite a bit. So you can either do it with S, or everything you can do via the dials up here. Again, that in the sense is very Photoshop. So, a evil cult led by a mad cultist with all kinds of crazy books in what is now converted to an evil temple, but used to be a temple of maybe a different god, which is maybe secretly urging or helping the adventurers to get here in the first place as a way to kind of avenge whatever's going on here. So I can build a story from this map entirely if I wanted to. So in this case, again, it doesn't quite match, so I'm going to darken it a little bit.
I just noticed your recently used menu. Convenient.
Oh, yes. Yep. Or you can add favorites. I don't have any really added because, again, it's so dependent on the map you're using. But yeah, so I'm darkening my statue a little bit because, again, it's a little old, a little beat up. Honestly, the hue is different, so I could mess with the hue if I wanted to, but I don't think it's going to do too much. It's kind of already a grayscale object. Probably reduce the saturation might help a little bit. Oh, it is a truly grayscale object. That's cool. Usually they're all colors that I can't actually change this.
Cool.
You want to reduce the brightness a little bit more, though. That's
pretty
better.
dope.
Yeah. Now, here's an example where layers are really helpful. So right now, because this feels like it's higher than some of these because of the way I placed it, the light's not casting on this the way I want it to. So if I put my light... Oh, I hit the wrong thing. I hit my light and put it up one layer, it will always cast a shadow on the object I have placed since. It's this one, there we go. So now, because I placed this altar, now before, when I had this on there, see how it doesn't really, I'm pointing to it with my finger, see how it doesn't really light this edge up?
Yep.
Up here? By putting it a layer higher, it will put that light source above it. So now it casts an even light the way it's supposed to on this object. And then now that's going to work for everything that's in that first layer now. So now this lighting on the statue, this lighting on the altar, the ritual ring. So that's where layering does really matter, I think.
Hello, Chaos in the Morgue.
Hi.
Thanks for joining us. If you have any questions for Charlie, feel free to ask.
All right. I got to add some more details. This is where you can kind of go a lot of different directions.
Yeah, we're having fun. We're having fun, right, Charlie?
I'm making a map. I keep forgetting Steve's even here. Like, oh, yeah, that's right. I'm doing this for a stream, and I'm doing this with Steve. And now I'm actually building a map based on the story in my head. I'm trying to see. I think they can.
Chaos, have you used Incarnate before?
That's what I'm looking for. There have been previous adventurers who have attempted this before, and their remains are still here. So now it's definitely a deadly encounter because this dead body's already here. And then, because you always have to entice the party to think that maybe they're going to get something good out of it, even if they're not, putting a random treasure chest in the corner is always good, as well as anything that may contain something that they can't see with their eyes. So barrels and boxes are just mean to players because they're going to want to know what's inside of them. And that's going to be in their heads also while they're looking at this map, trying to figure out what they want to do next is, oh man, if we can get through this, we'll get this treasure. And yeah, works every time. Put some upright barrels. Let's see. Oh, and then, these tantalizing, so tantalizing boxes.
Chests.
What could be in them?
Yeah.
So in this case, again, these things all seem awfully bright for being inside of a dim castle. So I'm going to go ahead and just reduce the brightness a little bit. And again, I find that ups the contrast. If you up the contrast a little bit, it really helps. So in this case, I'm going to undo this so I don't have to redo the settings each time. I'm going to get rid of these ones. I'll just duplicate this one each time. I want to. Same with this chest. It's got to go down a little bit. So anyway, this kind of makes me want to show you one thing. So I'm trying to set the scene as if it's really dark inside. There is a slightly easier way to do it. Let's see. You go to your scene settings, which is this last one down here, and you can add a whole new filter. They got a whole bunch of options. So, in this case, I'm going to say, is it night? If it's night, that's an automatic, it's night. What I use a lot to kind of give things just a little more kind of like old, potentially moody is you just use overcast. And we'll add that to the whole thing.
Dreary. I get it.
Yeah. So this is more or less, this is fine for an inside. I would say this is probably as well detailed as it needs to be. At this point, okay, it's really weird that there's just grass around the outside of this this castle, even if it's an evil castle. Let's say it's getting closer to fall.
I was thinking, where the hell is the door, personally?
Well, they're gonna have come in from the top. This is not. I mean, you could add a door down here, but why would they have it literally in front of the door? So
this is like the basement level.
Yeah, or like the other end of the castle. They had to go through the gates and stuff like that. So one thing, you can't do it in these style maps. Never mind. But I want to definitely up the size of this. And so in this case, random means it will give me one of the three. Random angle and stuff like that. So I can, it's not the same tree each time. And we'll say that the tree actually does go over a little bit of the edge of the walls here because they've been able to grow so tall that they're actually growing over the top of the castle.
Interesting.
And then might just add actually no, would be a stump here. Might be a broken tree in here somewhere. And this is the case I would put it a layer below so I can actually just show just the parts of it under there coming out of the tree branches here. Again, this is where you kind of get to the real subtlety of it if you want to. Add a lot of just little extras that don't really do much for the story. It just might give a little bit of more life to the world they're in. Let's see. And then we're going to add some probably undergrowth. Definitely not that.
So you pay $25 a month and you get access to all of these icons.
Yes.
I'm sorry, $25 a year.
A year, yeah. So it's like again, it's like $2. Again, it comes down to like $2 a month. It's again for this, and this is again, I can get really complicated with this. I have seen some they have a whole gallery of maps you can look through that people have made. This is far and away anywhere close at the quality I've seen on there. So those people clearly are taking a lot more time, I think. I do want to add some vines. There you go. So now you have some vine growth coming over the walls here. I mean, that's pretty good. You can actually see how many how many actual things you made. I know some of my battle maps can get into the 1,000 mark easy enough. for sure. Whereas in this is only 62 things. The 162 things I've changed to get to this, which isn't actually a lot. We're gonna name it. We're gonna say this is the streaming castle.
So, show us an example of a world map.
Yeah, 1 second. Let me finish saving that. And the other thing to do is, if I ever get back to actual playing at the table with people, when you can export these to be rather large, like they have a experimental HD thing, so I can get basically an 8K map. I can now go to Staples, get this printed and laminated on a piece of poster board. I now have a map I can bring to any game.
Wow. Super cool.
Right? So let's see. So our one of the world's maps I have for our group, this is just the world map. And there are a bunch of different ways you can do this. I added it, gave it a little more of that parchment feel because I didn't want too many of the details to distract from the locations. And I've been playing with different map styles, but this is pretty simple. You can usually tell, like, there's a town here. There's a mountain here. You know, some of them can get really detailed in the way that it's amazing. It looks like, like a topographic map out of an atlas to some extent, but it's easy for people to get lost. Like, okay, where are we going? This literally gives them easy locations to locate. So, and then you can have all kinds of events in and around wherever you want them to.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool, man.
I'll show you really quickly some of the regional maps. I'd like those a little bit more. Those are like your cities and stuff. More detail usually in those. So, yeah. So you guys had to fight some Duragar here. Give me a second. We'll open it up. You guys had to fight some Duragar here. So I had to make a city that was under siege. Just to show you guys, kind of give you guys, again, this map did not much as far as actually helping with the story, but I feel like it gave you guys a really cool feel.
Yeah.
Smoke, half the buildings are on fire. Well, we had talked about, Duragar normally can't be on the surface because they're sunlight sensitive. How do I fix that? Well, I have them belching this weird gas out of these mines. So, of course, this place is going to look really smoky, dim. I added this detail because these guys, the reason why you have to defend the city, it's so important, is that this is the breadbasket of the whole Dwarven Kingdom. Without this, people are going to starve. So again, details like that, I think they enhance. And then give you an example. This is the first town map I did in Incarnate. Again, I'm going to say my skills are getting a little bit better with each time. It's not bad. Again, their ability has changed. Again, some of the buildings look a little strange because, if I turn the angle to make them fit the map, they don't sit quite right with the perspective, but it works, and this is a great little first town,
How much time did you spend on the statues at the bottom?
Not long, because I basically was able just to rotate them. So, I would say less than 10 minutes.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, this whole map, I would say, other than the fact that I fished with it for weeks because I was nervous, realistically, probably now would take me 20 minutes. I think I could put this together if I know what I'm looking for. And then now they have a different style too. So like they have basically an above view watercolor style, which I think makes a more accurate street map. So I've been playing with those a lot more lately. So again, a little more top down.
Gotcha.
Easier to kind of really show like sectors. Like, we have housing, we have, down here's the blacksmithing. Down here you have stonemasons. Clearly this is a castle. You guys never did ask questions about why there were trees in the middle of a frigid wasteland above a mountain. That was a real solid hook that I put on there to interest you guys. And somebody goes, "Oh, there are trees."
Maybe
I'm like, "Yeah." Anybody want to ask about it? And like, nope, no takers. So I understand, like, that's also thinking of a factor taken from my time is like, how many details do I put in here for you guys to maybe pull that thread on, but how many am I willing to let you guys completely ignore and then move on with my life? So you can only do two. You can't do too many.
That old chestnut of the DM writes this huge book and the players just go off and do their own thing.
Yeah, again, trying to find that good bridge. I feel like you don't want to railroad them, but if you give the right incentives, unless they're absolutely just nuts for people, they're going to kind of follow along anyway because you're giving them a reason to.
Well, I know I will certainly take a greater detailed look at the maps that we play with in the future, and you can be ready for some solid questions as a player.
Yeah.
Charlie, thanks for sharing the last hour with us, and hopefully everybody who was watching or anybody who tuned in for a few minutes or whatever got a chance to see you in action and get some work done.
Yeah. Always send us questions, and we will be on pretty much every Friday at 8 with our regular game.
I think our next one's June 11th at 8 p.m.
Yep.
So thanks again. Thank you, Charlie. And
yeah.
Hope everyone has a great night. Thanks.